The fact that they both were sort of oddballs, that they probably should have been married at that point, or why weren't they? And why were they living in this scuzzy little flat, you know, with a landlady? Oh my God, this is fun actually. I mean, I haven't seen these in so many years. Hello, I'm Jude Law, and today I'll be watching some scenes from throughout my career, most of which I haven't seen in many, many years. So this will be quite intriguing for me, and hopefully for you. Here we go.
I love it here! I'm gonna move here! Beautiful.
So this is my final scene.
I wanted to tell you my plan. God.
I haven't seen this in so many years. I'm being like flooded with memories. First of all, what a location. I mean, that was the experience throughout this whole film. Couldn't quite believe how beautiful everywhere was.
I thought I'd come back in the new year under my own steam.
Really?
My God, we're really young. So this is 26 years ago, I think. I'm shocked at how young we are. I remember rehearsing this scene. Anthony insisted on having that boat or a similar sized boat brought into Cinecittà, the film studio in Rome, and we rehearsed it in quite full detail, obviously without the movement. So once we were out there, it was suddenly quite shocking how much chop there was in the water, and so standing up and things like that were really suddenly quite hairy.
I got a place in Rome, and then when we're there, we could be there, and then when we're here, we could be here.
I don't think so.
Obviously, we spent days out just drifting and being followed by another small boat with the whole team on it. They'd stick the boat on the end of another boat so they could film in one direction and control it, and then flip the boat round and do the same with our boat sort of sticking out the end, if you see what I mean. So you got movement, because also you're still fighting horizon. We didn't want any modern liners, you didn't want, you know, ocean liners, you didn't want any land, and so on and so forth.
See, particularly with the Marge problem, you just blame me.
Marge and I are getting married.
I think what's coming back is this sense of nuance and detail that stems to the discussions that we all had with Anthony and how prepared we were.
How?
How?
Yesterday you were ogling girls on the terrace. Today you're getting married? That's absurd.
I love Marge.
It's just reminding me of all these weird little shifts that I remember, you know, Anthony wanting to draw out of the piece. Misunderstandings of intimacy, the misunderstandings of emotions.
You love me, you're not marrying me.
I just remember going into that with such a fine-tooth comb in rehearsal. And so seeing it kind of pop out is really rewarding, actually. I'm quite surprised how much we're getting in to one small moment.
Tom, I don't love you.
No, I don't mean that as a threat.
To be honest, I'm a little relieved you're going.
Dickie's never gonna go there. The type of young man he is in that period of time, there's no way he's gonna ever open a door to any kind of recognition of homoeroticism or that kind of a relationship. I remember Anthony also giving me a phenomenal note. Something to do with, like, you know, having someone come to stay, but you never like them more than when you're driving them to the airport. That kind of like, you know, it was great having you. I really can't wait to see you again.
I know there's something. That evening, when we played chess, for instance, it was obvious.
What evening?
Oh, sure, no, it's too dangerous for you to take on. Oh, no, well, we're brothers. Hey.
Anne had a really interesting idea that he wanted the choice for Tom to kill Dickie to be self-defense and a moment of explosive rather than premeditated violence. And he also wanted Dickie to be ruined in some way. And he thought the best way to do that was to take his face. He said, wouldn't it be great if he could hit you and you kind of look at him for a moment and then your face just falls in half?
You can't move without Dickie, like a little girl all the time.
Oh. Here we go, so he looks up. Nothing, and then his head just goes. They did it with an actual effect. So I was wearing a prosthetic that they pressed a little button and the whole thing just goes. He wanted that as the sort of instigation of Dickie's fury at Tom. Here we go. And then Tom's response to Dickie's fury. And also, interestingly, I suppose his idea was that would ultimately have been the end of his kind of life as beautiful Dickie anyway, because half his face would have been, which was an interesting choice. He sort of thought, oh, this sort of beautiful life was over. Whenever you shoot a fight, there's always a kind of, first of all, emotionally, you're winding yourself up so that you can play it emotionally as well as physically. And there's always a sort of an extra 10, 15% that comes out of you when you call action, which, you know, it gives you a margin of error and the unknown. And we were throwing each other around in this, and there was no padding, it was a kind of wooden boat. So Matt may have got injured, but he certainly injured me, he broke my rib. You know, it's just one of those things that happens.
Is it real?
I don't know, David.
God, I haven't seen this
Coming?
in like 15 years.
I can't tell yet.
We filmed this in the, is it called the Spruce Goose Dome? There's a huge hangar outside of Los Angeles where they kept the Spruce Goose, which was the biggest airplane I think ever built. And they built this forest in there and they built the Flesh Fair in there. You know, most directors want more time, you know, give me more schedule to shoot this stuff, and only Steven Spielberg said, I can shoot all that in half the time, and they cut the whole thing down because he was so prepared. I mean, it was remarkable. I'd never ever experienced the sort of pace and vision that he had. I mean, no, he was editing in his head as he was shooting. So if you came to a moment in a scene which he knew he was going to cut from, he'd just cut and move. And I mean, it's like a kind of cinematic genius, you know.
Is Blue Fairy mecha, augur, man or woman?
Woman.
Woman. I know women.
Stephen is incredibly good at encouraging you to go away and be creative, and he's very open to ideas. So I was in London prepping for quite a month, if I remember rightly, with a choreographer called Fran James. I don't know that I went in specifically to learn to sort of move like a robot or anything.
They sometimes ask for me by name.
I think the discussion had already been had that maybe he had music coming out of him to seduce people or to create an ambience. And I remember the discussion between Stephen and I that maybe he just had a CD player or something in him, so the whole clique came in.
No two are ever alike, and after they've met me, no two are ever the same. And I know where most of them can be found.
The prosthetic started out as being the great veneal. They took a mold of my face, built a prosthetic, and then stuck it back on my face. But it was too restrictive and it kind of looked too plasticated. So they kind of reduced it down to brow and nose and chin. And we ended up actually just using a piece on the chin and a tiny piece on my nose. With a little lady shave, we took all the hair off my face, like all the fluff, and sprayed in this hairline. And most of that is just this very, very thick makeup that gives me that kind of plasticky look, which they would then polish. I mean, I remember constantly coming in, buffing my face. It was a nightmare for my hands though, because they shaved everything off my hands as well, and it all grew back like twice as thick.
My customers may ask for me by name, Gigolo Joe, what do you know?
Somewhere in there, this idea of Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire, and so I worked with Fran on dance, and weirdly, the sort of combination of dancing and robotic movements and mannerisms. For example, the way he walked would always be the same, and so we kind of created something that was fluid. My eldest son was 3 when I was making this, and my daughter was born. So I really remember, I really loved working with Haley. First because he was a kid, and I was in that sort of, in a very familial place with my babies, and he was so astonishingly good. Kids are either being kids, and you kind of capture them being themselves, or they're really performing, and he was able to just take notes like a really mature actor. And it was this sort of really odd mix between kind of goofing around talking about, I don't know, The Simpsons or some funny thing he had done on the weekend, and then also really being able to play these characters opposite each other and really engage. And he had a lot to deal with, because you know, the teddy, Stan Winston had built this incredible remote control teddy bear, but also it needed puppeteers, and that takes a lot of time. Fun, obviously, for a kid, but also time consuming, and he was just so present and so brilliant.
You all done? How's the photographer?
Good. Professional.
Gosh, look how little Natalie looks, she's a baby.
Are you one of your lot?
What, female?
Americano.
Reflecting on this film, it is one of the few where, quite honestly, the script was so incredibly good and considered. There was such a simplicity to its device, which is, moments in these people's lives when they meet and moments when they split up, and when they meet and when they split up. These really specific key moments in their lives, in their love lives, that had such a sort of raw and familiar tone and taste and covered territory that anyone who's been in a relationship has sort of been through, that really one had to just give oneself to the drama, to the text. Anna?
Alice.
This is where Patrick Marber is so brilliant. He's playing the awkwardness. What Mike did so brilliantly was create an environment of trust and vulnerability and openness by being so open about his own past and his own loves and personal dramas, that it meant that we were all connected and safe and able to do the same through the drama. It wasn't a piece which I remember having to do work where I thought, okay, plan this character's emotional arc, plan this character's emotional response, because that was already in the map of the script. It was more a case of turn up and be honest to the moment that the script is directing you in. And when you're working opposite brilliant actors who are doing the same, and they're all there and they're all willing to be brave and open, it's the best kind of play you can experience as an actor.
Will you take my photo? I've never been photographed by a professional before. I'd really appreciate it. I can pay you.
No, I'd like to.
Only if you don't mind.
Why should I?
I think I'm quoting someone else when I say that it's like a sport, like you play at your best when you're playing someone really, really good, right? They raise your game. Well, the same applies in acting, and what I've also found is that the best actors are also usually very collaborative and open, because the key to acting is listening. It's not, I think people assume it's what am I going to do with my role, rather than listening to what the other person's doing, which engages you immediately.
She is beautiful.
I've got to see you.
No.
What's this? Patriotism?
I don't want trouble.
I'm not trouble.
I never quite understood the final footnote of Patrick's story, which is that she's never told him the truth, that actually Alice isn't Alice at all. She dies in the play, and we reconvene and we talk about it and sort of confess the repercussions of having learned about that death. But the lie is a really interesting one, which if I remember rightly, the lie remains in the film. I see the name Alice as on a plaque, which immediately makes you think, do you ever know anyone? Is the person in front of you that you're in love with really the person that they're telling you they are or promoting that they are? So first of all, my memory is that this was one of the first things we shot. It was literally the only time we were all together at the same time, because there's no other parts of the film. So it was one of the, I remember hanging out with the others. Kate and I certainly did, because we had kids about the same age. And Jack I remember hanging out with, but I remember it was an odd occasion. It was kind of exciting. Apart from anything, it was meant to be New Year's Eve, right? So we'd shot all the exteriors in the UK. They built the interiors in LA. We moved to LA, and I wasn't in the first 4 weeks filming, and then we went behind. So I was just in LA for 2 months and got tan. I get very tan if I even look at the sun. There are slight differentiations between my skin tone, between the interior and exterior. There were obviously moments where the kids were there with us, but then I remember there being big sections of this scene. The children weren't around, so we were having to respond as if the kids were doing stuff. So I think that was one of them. Us watching Kate and Jack kind of kiss and cuddle. Nancy would say, oh, the kids might be kind of making fun of that. So us responding, like going, shh, 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 all of that was sort of, we're pretending the kids are in the room. Oh, yeah, do that. I just remember this being so much fun. This is just fooling around, to music and pretending you're having a great time. Well, you are having a great time. I remember having conversations with Nancy early on and her referencing the really classic romantic comedies, that Tracy and Hepburn and Cary Grant, and going back and looking at those. And that was absolutely, we were trying to emulate that with a modern twist. And I think those types of films really do affect people. There's a sort of honesty and good cheer to them that make people feel good. And obviously it has a Christmas theme, which means it comes round annually and people therefore kind of like to recreate things ritualistically. But I'm thrilled that I'm in something that people go back to time and time again. The number of films I've made, not a lot of them have had that response.
That's one odor I can't quite put my finger on. There's a candy floss, molasses, maple syrup, barley sugar, toffee, apple.
In a very polished way, we were making it all up as we went along, which was just the dynamic that was the kind of alchemy of this film. To say that it was the three of us, meaning Guy, Robert and I, is not true, because of course there were all these other inputs. But it felt very much like the three of us would go in and look at what we had to do for the day and would play for a couple of hours and try stuff. And, Robert is exceptional at coming up with ideas and moments, and Guy obviously is a writer as well as a director, and so we would sort of play and then reduce, and that would be what we would shoot, but we'd always have alternatives and ideas, and things that's in the moment. So things like coming up with a candy apple because the guy's got one and he's just been talking about a scent somewhere else was just a funny, silly idea. That's why I started laughing. We always wanted to differentiate the styles of fighting between Watson and Holmes, that Holmes was more controlled but equally usually in deeper trouble. Watson was a bit more of a brawler, a bit of a pugilist but a soldier, so kind of tough guy but not necessarily as refined. And we wanted it to look plausible, like, not sort of big special effects fights, but using saucepans and hats and headbutting people and just like rough and ready. And then also intertwining the humor. Robert and Guy were absolutely brilliant at this. The elements that I really wanted to bring out of Watson was that he was writing the books. So it was his observations, it was his translation of what was happening. What was it like to really live with this guy, rather than the genius, which you might add in the book, or rather than the great cases and the way he would, did his socks smell? Did he wash up? Did he use my clothes? All the funny stuff of kind of the odd couple, which I thought was just humorous and real. The fact that they both were sort of oddballs, that they probably should have been married at that point, or why weren't they? And why were they living in this scuzzy little flat, with a landlady? All of those truths, the idea that through Watson's eyes, he was sort of looking at it as an author, thinking, this is a very good story, maybe I can pen that,
Who's this interesting old fellow?
I inquired of Monsieur Jean. To my surprise, he was distinctly taken aback.
Don't you know?
He asked.
Don't you recognize him?
Lots of things come back here. Jason and I had worked together on I Heart Huckabees and had gotten on very, very well. He's just a delightful and beautiful man, and so I was really excited that it was he and I. Monsieur Jean signaled to me and I leaned closer.
I'll tell you a secret. He takes only a single bed sleeping room without a bath in the rear corner of the top floor. And it's smaller than the service elevator.
I believe, other than Tom Wilkinson, the late Tom Wilkinson, sadly, I think we were the first up. We would have dinner every night, so there was already this real sort of intimacy. I was a really big fan of Wes's films and really and sort of understood the world and just really wanted to be in it. And I actually wrote to him saying, I really want to be in that world. And he asked me to come along. So stepping into the style and the tone of his films felt pretty straightforward because it was something that I had admired and wanted to be a part of. This is a really interesting moment. So I remember shooting this, and it was my first lesson in how specific he was, because Jason's to my right. Now normally you just sort of look like that, if you're talking to someone, and he wanted me to look like that because he wanted my profile, because that's how sort of specific he is. Like, cut, no, you've got to really look round like this, and then, so all the angles are very, very considered, which again is why they're so famous for their design and for their style. For example, that set was just a flat with a projection on the back, built solely for that shot. So this really was an older bathhouse.
I admire your work.
I beg your pardon?
I said, I know and admire your wonderful work.
Me and Murray spent 2 days in Bath, basically, together. Well, not together. I mean, what to say about working with Murray Abraham? He was just a delight. He was mischievous and curious, but also just very, like all of us, very happy to be there and happy to be a part of it, and so engaged and meticulous.
May I invite you to dine with me tonight? And it will be my pleasure, and indeed my privilege, to tell you my story.
And when you work with someone who's had the career or the experience that he has, you know, you're learning just by being in their presence, watching how they handle a camera or a scene or a line. I mean, he's obviously famous also for his beautiful voice, and so what he can do to a line, it's like listening to a great saxophonist play a note.
I love it all just the same, this enchanting old ruin.
They can bend it like that, or, you know, hit that high, and so you're just learning.
He would never do anything without asking you first.
Oh, Kit, what's this woman to you? She was a radical. So this was my first day on set. She deserted her husband, her children. I was fortunate with this part in that I had months to prepare, because me and Karim discussed it in like October. I had Christmas and then it got pushed, so I had a few months at the beginning of the year to really get ready. So I remember being obsessed with this idea that I really wanted him to always carry a sense of who he had been, that he had been this beautiful man, he had been this great athlete, he had been this prince full of promise, and was suddenly well aware that he was on the way out, and was furious with himself, furious with life, furious with God, furious with the world, that everything had become such a mess. So the fury was always present, plus he's in agony all the time, blistering agony with these legs. I pictured him like a wounded gorilla. I really wanted him to still be powerful up here. The idea of being able to grab people and grab things and own them. James! James! I completely underestimated having this falcon. And not only is it a falcon, it's a really rare falcon. It's like a snow falcon from Siberia or something. I'd had a bit of a practice, but I'd forgotten that, of course, it's gonna respond if I start getting angry here. James! And James was the name of the chap, so that all just became a part of it. That's me getting angry because I'm trying to do the scene, and then the falcon's going nuts, so it's just like, take it off, mate! James! Because I didn't want to get clawed. And that's just one of those lovely, lucky moments where you're kind of playing two things, and the bird, of course, exploding added to the flurry of the scene.
I'm sorry. What? I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me.
I worked with a very good intimacy coordinator on this. You know, I had to make sure everyone who came on set knew that I may touch them, because he's a king and he owns you.
Friend from childhood confused me.
It's very physical. I touch a lot of people's mouths, and that relates to an appalling way he abuses his wife, where he kind of puts his fingers in her mouth. It's this sense of you're nothing, you're an animal. And he does the same with a dog. That kind of physical grabbing, ownership, disregard was really important to this sense of status that I wanted him to have. I was completely unaware of where the cameras were, and that's the way Karim works, that he would sort of shoot it and sometimes film when he wouldn't say action. So I remember finishing the day's work and being really like, have we got it? Did we get the scene? I didn't feel like we actually shot it, and it was me getting used to Karim's style, which was very fluid and not secretive. That makes it sound like it was illicit, but it was very, very subtle.
Forgive me.
Don't question us. I learned during the prep that Henry was the first monarch in England, anyway, to refer to themselves as the royal we, us, being me, Henry, the crown, and God. So I changed all of his language to us, we, and it makes him psychopathic. He sounds so weird, don't question us. And he's talking about himself. It's so odd. Thank you so much for watching.